Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Doppler'S Gear Garage, where today we are talking about compression. Last week, a number of people chimed in like, hey, compressors and compression is something that I'm very interested in, so wanted to go deep on that today. First of all, my name is Doug. If we haven't met, it's my pleasure. We do something at the beginning of the show here for everybody that's tuning in, and that is essentially where we just do a thing called Raise Them Up. That is down in the chat, let us know where it is that you're coming from. If you're new to the show, welcome aboard. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area drinking some Pete's coffee and an Optavia shake. So good morning to you. So compression, holy cow. It is a very interesting topic. Over the past several days, I've been kind of thinking about all the different ways that I use it, how much I love it, and if you're kind of on the outside looking in, it could be, one, a little bit confusing, and two, a little bit overwhelming in that, unlike, a kind of drive pedal where you've got, all right, generally have the amount of gain or drive. You have a volume control, so that when you step on that thing, if you want some boost, you've got it, and then you got a tone control. Compression is this very weird and kind of mysterious thing that does a number of things simultaneously, some of which are intuitive, and some of which are less intuitive. Brett, first of all, good morning. Great to see you, my friend. Always a pleasure. Roseville, California. Come on. Let's hear it for the Golden State here. So to my right here, let's see if I can get over to that screen there. I actually have kind of one of the, let me get I've moved that since we last did that. Hold on a second. OG compressor. A DBX, come on, there we go. Get into screen there, don't be shy. So that is an original DBX 166 compressor, and that is kind of, in many ways, where the whole compression for guitar thing really got started. There are other compressors that are out there, like the Ross compressor that kind of were, if you will, the OG stomp box thing. But in many ways, when you think about the 80s and 90s, the idea of having some sort of, get back over here now, there we go, I've done it to myself, some sort of rack mount compressor, if you think about people like Steve Lukather, so on and so forth, what you had was studio compressors making their way into guitar racks. And so the use of a studio compressor is a different thing than the way we traditionally use compression on guitar. So what I wanted to do was run through some kind of classic guitar examples, also run through some studio examples, which I think for many of the people watching may be the most useful, because it's not something that, first of all, I've ever talked about, quote unquote, in public. Number two, it's something that can dramatically impact your recording experience. And number three, it just kind of gives you some other strategies on how to kind of glue your mixes together. So first of all, I got a couple of other people that I just want to say hello. Stephen, good morning to you. Salutations. Iowa, come on. Sean, hello. Excellent. New Hampshire, balmy 35 degrees. I love it when people who are used to the cold think that 35 is balmy. Awesome. Griffin, good morning to you, my friend. How are you? Look at this. The community coffee is waiting to make its way upstairs. Thank you for that. Always a pleasure, my friend. There we go. Drinking Parina coffee in NOLA. Okay, there we go. And John Mello, good morning. I already know that John Mello is in the San Mateo area. Good to see you, my friend. Did you sell that Les Paul yet? Albert, good morning, my dear friend. The Boogie Fanatics are in the house. All right, so here's the deal. Kind of it all, for many of us, started there, whether we know it or not. So if you think about Steve Lukather on Michael Jackson, arguably would be one of the first places we can go, oh, I know that sound, right? A little bit of slap back. By the way, just as long as we're on the topic of kind of studio gear, hanging out down below here is my, don't do that. It's my SDE 3000. We're going to be increasingly talking about some of this old school OG gear that, just like the DBX there, originally was found in studios for studio quality recording. And again, guitar players like Steve Lukather kind of went, hey, I can put that into my rack. All right, so here's the deal. I want to start off with a couple of... Oh, Paul Richard, hold on. I missed in order. Adam, good morning. Hello, hello. Paul, hello, hello, hello to you. So I've got a couple... Oh, Jimmy Arsenault. Hey, how you doing, my friend? Have a great day. Enjoy the work. Always a pleasure, my friend. And by the way, that thing that I'm not supposed to know about, that you told me that I'm not supposed to know about, was pretty awesome. So, but I don't know anything about it. And by the way, I need to have a conversation with you at some point about borrowing a certain preamp that is in your possession. Speaking of OG gear, we'll leave it there. All right, so I'm going to start off with a couple of examples of some of the traditional ways that we hear compression being used on guitar. So although it's not using the 166 here, it is actually using my trusty Fractal Audio VP4 for some very noticeable compression. You're going to hear some delay, kind of some modulation on the delay and some reverb. Let's jump into it with my Kramer SM1. So that kind of jangly, squishy vibe is really how most of us think about compression being used on guitar. If you think about Corey Wong, another great compressor person that more or less lives in an always-on. If you spend much time playing at church, just about every worship guitar player I know, the compressor is always on. And there are a number of kind of OG compressors that exist. Let me get you into frame here. You know, it's always funny. It's like I can have all these intentions of all the things that I wanted to do, and then there's what actually gets done. So this right here is basically the latest incarnation of the MXR Dynacomp. In many ways, for guitar players, that was the first moment that we encountered compression. Arguably the most famous guitar stomp box compressor, and great for bass. But this little guy here, although I can't really pull it off the board here, well, I can. Yes, I can. Come on, you're pulling off there. What's really cool about this is this has a number of the features that, if you're looking for a compressor for guitar, are what you want. So let's see if I can just kind of, well, with these glasses, there we go. So we've got output, we've got sensitivity, we've got tone, and we've got whatever the heck that says. So let me walk you through basically what your average floor controls you're looking for on a compressor, in my opinion, are. Not all of them have them. Not all great compressors for guitar or bass have them as well. But generally, if you're looking for prerequisites, you're looking for a couple of things. Number one, a tone control. And basically, what that does is it means that as you kind of squish the guitar down, what traditionally happens is you're taking the top of the transient off. And basically, in the framework of compression, what it is and how it does is that it sets basically a baseline or a threshold. Anything that's any louder than that threshold, it compresses. In studio world, there's a ratio. 1-to-1 means it don't do nothing. 2-to-1, it means it's compressing it to a certain extent, and I think it's 2 decibels of compression every time for anything that gets above that line. I could be wrong, so just take my still studying this part of it. However, then 4-to-1, obviously, then you're creating that much more compression. But the compression ratio as you go up squishes anything above the threshold. So the threshold, and this is kind of, I think, the first term that most guitar players can like, I don't know what the threshold does. Well, if you think about a noise gate, which most of us at this point have used, it's kind of like everything above a certain point, that gets smacked. In terms of sensitivity, it means basically that is the compression ratio. That's how much it's kind of doing that, I'm pretty sure. You know what? I'm going to say I need to do a little more research on that. So here's this little backstory behind this. I went over to storage and grabbed the 166 yesterday. In the midst of all of this, I had to put all the studio together and didn't get everything done that I wanted to, but was able to pull together these clips. One of the things we're going to see in a moment, I've got a Pro Tools session up, which is one of the ways you're going to really hear the studio magic of compression on guitars. So one of the other things that I didn't get to do was kind of go through every single one of these settings on every one of the compressors that I was going to potentially gather in for today, nor did I get a chance to set up some sort of switching device to actually walk through them. In turn, what I was going to do was I was going to use my looper to do that. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. There will be a YouTube video coming. All right, enough preamble. So the deal is, the threshold, or whatever that says on the pedal, on this guy, it is called the peak stop level. So you're going to see some sort of thing that's saying above this particular spot, that's where it's adding the compression. And then, generally speaking, a great starting place for guitar compression is right around 3 to 1. And we'll kind of walk through some of the sounds of all of that. I can see some comments pouring in here. And so hang on a second. First of all, Rick, good morning. Andy, hang on a second. Hey, Steve, what's going on? My man, great to see you. Hello, hello. Your amp is sitting in the back row there. Hello, hello. But I bought 3 guitars at Christmas. There we go. Andy Timmons has great compressed tones as well. And yes. Rick, hello, my dear friend. Excellent. Dallas, Texas. Come on. Playing at church there must be use these effects, delay, a huge hall reverb, and compression. There you go. Kevin, good morning to you, my man. We'll talk about knobs sooner than later. And if you're from Australia, you're probably wondering what I'm talking about. Because in Australia, knobs mean something a little different. Probably England, too. In any case, hello. All right, so the deal is you have this threshold, and everything above that, then you have these traditional compression ratios of 2 to 1 is kind of where you're beginning to grab it, 4 to 1, and then you're going to get a chance to hear this in action. And so the thing about a guitar compressor is that the tone control enables you to kind of compensate for one of the important things that a guitar compressor does, is that it's lopping off the transients above a certain threshold. And so the point being is once it gets above that threshold, it looks for, generally speaking, on a guitar compressor, the first thing that kind of goes, oh, above that threshold. And most of us, that's going to be the pick attack. And so what ends up happening is because the pick attack is a trebly sound, it has a tendency to squash the tone, and the squishiness is partially because the initial attack that you would get has been tamed. Again, everything above that threshold, it grabs and not only puts a ceiling on, you have the ability to adjust how quickly the compressor responds, which is the attack, not always present on these guitar pedals, and how slowly it lets go, which is the release. So you kind of have, you can control, if you will, the way it's massaging your sounds. But generally speaking, what's going to happen is your pick attack is the first thing you're going to lose. So if you're thinking about something where you got this beautiful high gain tone and you want to just maybe use a little bit of compression to just kind of tame the pick attack a little bit, that's one of the places you would use in the high gain setting. And by the way, I will warn you, it's really addictive, because one of the things about playing fast is the idea that when you're playing fast, you're going to hear the pick. And I'm not plugged in today, but that attack, and when you're hearing that, the pick attack, you can actually hear the buzziness of the pick there. By taming that transient and that little bit of sound, it makes it a little bit easier to play. That's one of the great things about compressors. However, they're highly addictive, and if you start using them on your lead tones, watch out, because they can cover a multitude of sins, if you will, with the right hand. All right, so that said, I'm going to pull up another clip here so we can hear it in action, and I'm going to pull up the... which one am I going to pull up? I'm going to pull up the origin effects here, and this is a slightly longer one, but this is actually a really good example of hearing it on kind of some lead tones. As I recall, I'm playing with just my fingers on this, but it kind of allows you to kind of create a soup. If you think of Andy Timmons, who was kindly mentioned before. By the way, Andy's new album came out yesterday. Go pick it up, please. But sometimes it's the combination of things. And in this particular case, I have the Origin Effects compressor, which is a great compressor, by the way, working in a way that you're just kind of massaging a little bit of the transient out. It's adding a little bit of sustain, but it's also adding this wonderful warmth to the sound. So let me just go ahead and run that. It's a slightly longer clip, but it, for me, was kind of an inspired moment. Here we go. Okay, first of all, I got a couple new folks here to say hello. Brett, good morning to you, my friend. Hello, hello, hello. Jose, buenos dias, mi amigo. ¿Cómo está? Rick Hunold. You know, the funny thing is, I was thinking about you yesterday. I've got a 410 boogie over there that I was getting ready to put the wheels on. And every time I think about boogie cabs and wheels, I always, of course, think of you. Per this conversation we had about, of course, transference of energy from the cabinet to the floor. So anyways, great to see you. Covers a multitude of sins. And yes, Multitude of Sins is probably a great song name. Love that. Rafael, buenos dias. ¿Cómo está? Rich Doyle. Okay, hey, thanks, my man. Great to see you. Hello, I'll be seeing you a little bit later. So the thing about that kind of, you can hear a little bit of the squishiness in there. But what it does is it just kind of creates this little bit of floaty quality in the framework of that. The other thing is that when you're playing with a cleaner tone, it doesn't have a tendency to have as much to sustain. So one of the things about what compression does is because it kind of lops off and get anything above the threshold, it has a tendency to do a couple of things. By the way, this guy also has, I was able to read it in the quote-unquote break there, it's got a clean control. And that is another great feature to have on the compressor, which is basically, it's the effect of kind of the blend or the mix of how much compression you want in there. So there is something in compression world, in the studio world, called New York drums. And the concept of New York drums, and hopefully I'm getting the percentage right, was basically half of the drum mix would be completely uncompressed. The other half, they would compress the pants out of it, and then you would have that blend of it. So you get all the squish and the squash and the glue that we'll demonstrate in a moment with some of the studio stuff. But then you've got this still uncompressed version. So all the transients and all the, you know, if you listen to a really quiet recording where the drummer's on the ride cymbal, you can hear, although that doesn't sound like a drumstick on a cymbal, but you can hear the transient of the stick actually hitting the cymbal. And one of the neat things is that when you kind of can find a way of blending those two together, you get the best of both worlds. And that's going to be something we'll demonstrate in the studio segment. I did bring out a few of my favorite things here because these really give us the ability to kind of go, holy cow, we got lots of controls here. And then we have one control. So this is the Analog Man juicer, right? Yeah. So this is a one knob compressor that's based on the Ross compressor with, of course, a little bit of Analog Man circuitry. My goal was, again, to put these all in a looper. So there's going to be actually a YouTube video on this. But the idea is it's literally just kind of one knob does it all. And so the interesting thing is that when you look at what compression does, is it basically says, hey, everything above the threshold, we're going to bring you down and we're going to contain you. But the other thing that happens when you compress it, it actually, guess what? It gets pushed down. So you have to have some of what's called makeup volume. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But there is the tendency, like, again, on the original Dynacomp, which, again, is kind of the OG. Most guitar players, if there's a compressor they've used, and starting bass players before they go into the Origin Effects one is hiding somewhere. But the idea is that the output allows you to compensate for the gain reduction, and then the sensitivity, well, actually, that's the output, but the output allows you to compensate because it gets quieter. When you step on the compressor, you want to be able to bring up the volume for making up for the gain reduction. Then you've got the sensitivity, which is how much it's actually squishing it, which is the compression ratio above the threshold. Hang on a second. Thank you very much, Nuno. Much appreciated. Great to see you like that photo, my man. Here's looking at you. Spencer Clark. I saw Becoming Led Zeppelin last week at IMAX, and when I got out, what I got was John Bonham's right foot. I don't think a man could work that foot that fast. It sounded like a double bass, and he only had one. When I first started playing, I bought a distortion and UT, but didn't have enough. But it didn't have enough gain. My local music shop suggested a compressor, so I got one. So, most common guitar approach for compression, think Corey Wong. Nice, funky thing. You know, a Tele can be, first of all, not only does it do that thing, but it also solves a couple of problems. If you think of a Tele into a twin reverb, no, a twin reverb has a pokey quality. It's actually one of my least favorite amplifiers in the Fender world, with the exception of a drip edge one that I played at a local guitar shop here called Subway Guitars. This amp was magic. I probably should have bought it. Drip edge, for those of you who don't know, is an era of Fender amplifiers that came just after the blackface. It's the very beginning of the silverface before they got rid of this little drip edge. And they essentially are blackface parts. Excuse me. These days you need to say black panel. My bad. And so they're just magic. And this amp, just whatever makes the twin reverb great, it had. For those of you who don't know, the twin reverb was Fender's answer to essentially Marshall. And just in case you didn't know, Marshall was the JTM 45100 was Marshall's answer to the high-powered twin. So there's this strained incestuous relationship happening in the high-gain world. I digress. The drip edge Fenders, beautiful sound. The twin reverb can be pokey. That particular drip edge one wasn't, in a really not particularly nice way, right around 2.5, maybe 3K, where it's like kind of that spike in the ear, especially if you plug in a Tele. But a compressor gets rid of the transient, the pokiest part of that. And now all of a sudden the warmth of the guitar comes out. It's not as pokey. And so the balance of that into a potentially too bright amplifier, now you've tamed what's going into it, and the amp goes, oh, okay, I don't have as much treble information to work with, and it produces those other signals. So in any case, and yeah, Corey is absolutely phenomenal. The compressor, that compressor had level attack sustain. It helped, but didn't like the weird way it squashed everything. Still don't. I use the clean boost more than the compressor. So this is the kind of the magic thing about compression, is that one, and as we're going to kind of go through in the studio demonstration, because I would say more folks here have experience using it on the front end of their guitar signal than in the studio. And so, you know, a good portion of my time in preparing for today was just kind of getting into the studio and kind of going through some of the different instances of what I like to do. Again, you've got just very simple, one knob does it all. It's a great compressor, by the way. You've got your OG, basically the amount of sensitivity, how much compression it's actually adding. It's got a set threshold, and the sensitivity is just choosing how much it's squashing it. And then you've got an output for quote unquote makeup gain. This is the fancy pants latest version, and I've got a few MXR compressors, but it's also got a sensitivity control that's a push button here. This is the bass compressor, also from MXR, and this is basically an 1176, which is a Universal Audio product compressor in a pedal. And so basically, what you've got is you've got your tool to be able to, you've got the release. So you've got the attack and the release. So that is how quickly it grabs it and how slowly it lets it go, if you will. There's a compression ratio, so that just how much it's actually grabbing it above the threshold. Now, the interesting thing about this is that on this type of a compressor, you essentially set the threshold by the input level, and so above a certain point it starts to grab, and then there's the output, which is the equivalent of makeup gain. The Ego compressor, again, this is probably going to have, let's take a look. So what I was looking for is this control, which is the blend control. So it means you can squash the snot out of the guitar and then blend in enough of the original sound. So if you want a little bit of the attack, you can have it. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds. It's got attack, sustain, which again, the attack is how quickly it grabs it. The sustain is how quickly or slowly it releases it. The tone, and then the volume, which again is your makeup gain. But the tone, this really kind of has all the things that you potentially want to look for in a great compressor, because it allows you to tweak all those things if tweaking is what you want to do. So Paul, the funny thing is over there in Effects World, they are alphabetized. And I'm looking over in K, and first of all, there were two compressors that did not make their way here. They may be on the next clip I'll try and find. So there are two Keeley compressors, one of which is actually more of a leveling amplifier, which is where the compression is very, very high. And it basically was based on, he got his hand on some of the chips that were in here and built this leveling pedal that's phenomenal. There's also the 4-knob Keeley compressor, which was kind of the de facto gold standard before everybody started kind of doing their take on the 1176. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull up some of my favorite UA plugins inside this Pro Tools session, and I have a great love for UA. So UA actually has, believe it or not, their own version of the 1176 that I don't have here. I almost pushed this off because I wanted to get that from my friends at UA. They will send one, and when I put together the actual YouTube video for this, quote unquote, that'll be in there, because I would be remiss to not do that. And the interesting thing about compressors, and it's slightly elusive in terms of how this works, but certain compressors are better for certain things. I have a once a month acoustic guitar gig. Mike Mitchell, what's going on, my friend? So the thing about your comment about the elusive kind of what it was doing, where you're feeling you were losing too much of the guitar, that's where the blend can be really helpful. So you can kind of go, hey, I want just a little bit of compression, or I really want to, tame the transients a whole bunch, so I'm going to compress it a bunch, but I'm just going to blend in just a little bit of that, so you get the best of both worlds, so it still feels and sounds like a compressor. Good morning, Mike. You were a big tipping point in let's do this, so thanks for that. Paul, with great pleasure. All right, I'm going to pull up another clip here, and let's see what it's going to be. There we go. Okay, I'm going to pull up some acoustic guitar here. At least this should be acoustic guitar. Well, I went over to the rack and tried to find in the case the Keeley four knob compressor, but it is eluding me at the moment. Okay, so here's the deal. Acoustic guitar is also a phenomenal place to put a compressor. So pretty much I have, first of all, this very strange gig once a month. I'm not really a casuals person. I'm not a great reader. In fact, I'm a terrible reader. But there's this country club a buddy of mine got married at. He asked me to play guitar. The woman that does events there said, hey, can we hire you? And I'm really like, yeah. So they pay me like really well. I go and improvise guitar for 2 hours. And I get a nice check and I leave. I have zero prep time other than putting together a little rig that kind of has a tendency to change here and there. But the Origin Effects compressor is kind of my go-to compressor on there. Quite often I'll put a looper and sort of some sort of universal audio delay reverb deal. The Delverb is one that I like. That's a different conversation on a different day. But the point being is acoustic guitar, where it really becomes helpful again, we were talking about this pick transient when you're playing, and I apologize that the other thing that I didn't get together was get my amp wired, but for the best of intentions, come off of there. But this little bit, that if you're trying to play fast on the acoustic guitar, there's a lot of pick transient noise. Now, there are a couple of things that I do in that use case. Number one is traditionally I'm playing with what would normally be a blue 1mm Dunlop Tortex pick. And generally when I start doing the acoustic guitar gig, I will move over to a green Tortex or a yellow Tortex. And that gets us down to basically about the blue, which I've custom done Doppler picks. They're 1mm, mine are black though. And ironically enough, the dye actually makes them a little bit more pliable. This is you're at 77, I think. So this will be an 88.88, and then this will be a 77. So these guys on acoustic guitar, they've just got a little bit more strum in the strum versus in the strum. So they have, because it's a softer pick, the sound, you'll be able to hear that. I'm using the same amount of tension, as long as I don't drop it. Hello. I'm going to go from the 1mm, and my mic is right here, by the way. You're going to hear the black pick, the green pick, and the yellow pick. So you get the most squishiness from the pick. The interesting thing is this last gig, one of the future episodes on a future YouTube video is going to be on gig preparedness. I almost always will make some sort of, although this isn't actually a list for such a thing, when I'm on good behavior, I'll make a list of all the things I need to make sure that I bring, because I am my own tech, like many of us are. So making that list reminds me, okay, blah, blah, blah. So I managed to, forget, and normally I'm set up in a particular corner. I don't need a junction box and an extension cable. They had me in another room, so I had to find power. So I was one AC cable short, which was really stupid. And I was I was a junction box short, and I was one long instrument run cable. So it was me and the amp. So there was no compression going on. I will tell you that once you get used to playing with compression, you have to work a little bit harder for your take-home pay if you're playing through an acoustic amplifier or into your DAW without one. So just keep in mind that it can compensate for things that you want to learn to do without it as well. So don't get too hooked on your compressor if it is impacting your ability to do things. If the compressor is off and you can't do them as well with compression on, they may sound better. You may get less pick transient, which on the acoustic guitar, when you're changing strings and trying to do fast stuff, because that gig is basically about a third of the time I'm shredding on the acoustic guitar. It's the greatest gig ever, and they love it. So, I'll play a little blues and I'll play these kind of little Phrygian-y kind of little shred things, and I can actually kind of greatest gig ever, and kind of get away with. It's the antithesis of a casual. In any case, it's a lot of fun, and the acoustic guitar that I use for that. There you were seeing this Epiphone J200. It's made its way to me here that I love. You'll be hearing more of that guitar. And there is a Boogie Rosette amp over there. That's my go-to amp, and it actually sounded great. I didn't, I've been working enough on my right hand that I didn't miss the compressor, and it was a really good opportunity because the moment I was like, no pedal board, okay, and it was a great opportunity to kind of go, okay, let's do this without a compressor. All right, now what I'm going to do in a moment after I take a look down here in the chat, okay, hang on a second. Okay, okay, so Brett, great point. So in a digital model, I use the compressor after the amp, and it seems to add what I want without messing with the dynamic range as much. We're going to spend some time inside Pro Tools walking through the art of that a bunch. Ibanez CP9 compressor limiter. So, gosh darn it, where is my old school Ibanez compressor? So I have I guess it's upstairs, an OG Ibanez compressor, which I got, no, it's a 2-knob compressor. So it would have been their take on the original Dynacomp. Which compressor is it? So, but it's a great sounding compressor. So yours is a newer one. Mine is an elderly kind of first generation with the spaghetti logo, as they call it. So there we go. My first gig in 2025 was a Taco Tuesday, Laugh Out Loud. This is where my career has gone. Come on. All right. David Henry, good morning. Hello. Welcome. Love that shot, by the way. Look at that Les Paul. All right. So what we're going to do now, in the midst of all this fun craziness, is I'm going to bring up a Pro Tools session. And I'm going to have to be really mindful of kind of my volume as I turn my mic on and off, and also as I potentially talk while the session isn't playing, and just kind of because the easiest thing would be for me to have put in earbuds and not have it monitored through the monitor. But for the sake of time, all right, so let me pull up the track that we're going to do. Okay, I closed Pro Tools a minute ago because I was a little short on resources. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a chance to hear one of the songs that's on my forthcoming instrumental album. And there is basically a 2-track stem, a stereo stem of the drums, a stem of the bass, and then I just double track 2 guitars. And we're going to loop a section of the song there. And we're going to use compression and leveling in 3 ways. Number 1, you're going to get a chance to hear it, just how in terms of it impacts the guitar. And in so doing, you'll hear just on its own what it's doing on the guitar. And I'm using, basically, it's the 160 plugin, which is the mono version of this. And this is going to be a universal audio plugin. One of the neat things about using your effects in the box, and honestly in the universal audio world, one of the great benefits is that with their interfaces, there is an application called Console. And Console enables you to load a plugin inline and either quote unquote print it to quote unquote tape. That is, say, as you're recording, it actually includes that information to the recorded track, or just allows you to monitor with that in line and doesn't include that in there. And one of the cute tricks that I learned from Larry Mitchell that I didn't know how to do is you could actually copy the setting of how you set it up on Console on the way into the DAW, and then load that same plugin inside your DAW, and then cut and paste those settings, and then you save them as a preset if you're so inclined. So let me load up this track here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the Pro Tools window, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the layout of what I'm doing in there. Let's see. Pro Tools is right there. Thank you. And generally what happens, let's see. Oh, you know what? Maybe if I do it as the desktop, Zoom is a little persnickety about this, but I think Ecamm Live is going to be better. So let's see what we do here. You can allow me to? No, you're not. Okay, hold on. Primary display. Okay. So if I go over here, in theory, let me just do one thing real quick. Got to do one little bit of prep here. Let's take the Ecamm Live monitor. Good. It's doing exactly what I want. All right, great. You can see all that good stuff. That's what I wanted to have happen. Okay, now, what you can see right here is this is the DBX 160 compressor. What I've done here is these are the two guitars, and I normally should label them GTR1, and this guy is GTR2. And so I've got one pan to the left, the other pan to the right, and then I've created a group with these three things in there. So let me just walk through a little bit of the routing thing before I talk about the grouping thing. Basically, when you traditionally have a channel, it just kind of runs through what's the equivalent of the stereo bus in console world, the master fader. So everything kind of dumps out into there. However, in this instance, what I've done is I've created an auxiliary. Oh, no. Hang on. I got to do something here real quick. All right. Sorry about that. Hang on just 1 second. My computer and an application called Loopback where it creates that little echo that you heard there. My apologies. I'm launching Pro Tools in the background here, and we're going to be running back through this guy. Come on. And then we will be kind of back in there, and we'll get a chance to walk through the... Why this matters is the routing is that once you kind of hear what this enables you to do to your guitars, if you're not doing it, you're going to be like, I need to be doing that. A number of the people that I hang out with are at kind of the beginning of their recording journey. And what's great about recording is, even if you're not interested in putting music out there into the ether, you really get a chance to hear kind of like, oh, that's what my guitar sounds like. Ooh, I need to work on this. For most of us, it's a slightly painful, revealing process. But what's great about that is in the process of hearing what our strengths and our weaknesses are, we're able to apply some things around that. All right, let me get back over here and share. There we go. Thank you. All right, so here's the deal. Here's my compressor, which is currently bypassed. So what I've done is I created an auxiliary track. And basically, you can't record anything to it. It just has information that passes through and out of it. And so the output is set to my main monitor output, which is really the stereo bus that everything goes out through. The input I've set, hello, come on. The input I've set, hello, come on. The input I've set on bus 5 and 6. And the output of these guys I've set on bus 5 and 6. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm routing this guitar and this guitar into this input before this input sends it into the master fader. That is, say, guitar 1 and guitar 2 are both going into aux 1, and aux 1 is going into master 1. So what that enables me to do is control both guitars from one fader, and in turn, I can compress both guitars rather than putting an instance of the compressor on each of these channels. Come on, stop. Stop that. Stop that. There we go. Oops. What the hell? Delete. My mouse is having a moment. There we go. So what? So instead of putting an instance, as it's called, or an instantiation of this compressor on each one of these channels here, I can run both of them into this singular instance that allows you to save resources. And when I say resources, I mean in terms of the headroom of which your computer is operating. And then it allows you, the benefit is, rather than having two compressors that you have to adjust, you can adjust both of them within this one particular stereo bus if you're wanting to adjust them the same way. So the other thing then you can do is I've created a group. That is to say, you can kind of select these guys right like that and group them together, which in this instance I've called GTR. And what that means is when you solo them, they all solo together. Why do you want to do that? Well, I'm going to demonstrate that, and I'm going to mute my mic and hopefully remember to unmute it. We're going to start off with in the mix, and I'm going to loop from here to here, and I'm not going to have the compressor on yet, but you're going to hear these guys in the framework of the mix, and then soloed. All right, shush. The big benefit of doing that is that if I disable that group to solo these guys and hear just the guitars, I actually have to select all 3 solo buttons, which is a giant pain in the rectum. I said it. I said rectum. I might say it again, rectum. All right. So now that we've got those puppies soloed, I'm going to toggle between the compressor bypassed and on. Now, the amazing thing about compression is it seems to, well, cover a multitude of sins, and it cleans things up in some interesting ways. Now, I'm going to head back over here, and we're going to go back to here. So, one of the nuances of compression is the way it affects the tone. And in a minute, you're going to hear how the guitar and the bass working together, how adding the compression to the guitars gets the guitar and the bass to speak together, where without the compression on, the guitar and the bass are kind of fighting each other out. But because, again, above a certain threshold, the compressor is grabbing that information, it's hitting the transients, you're choosing how quickly it's grabbing that transient and how slowly or quick it's going to let go of it. But that just allows you to create a smoother guitar experience. But one of the things that begins to happen is that if you think about, if you were to take a bass drum, and you were to lop all the top end off in EQ, and you had, John Bonham hitting the kick drum, there is, in addition to the sound of the beater hitting the drum head, there is the sound of the body of the beater making the kick drum go boom. So that will have, if you will, an explosive effect. So the compressor will allow you to grab that part as well. So that is to say, although we most noticeably hear the way it grabs the transient, that's not the only thing that it's grabbing. So if there's a part that's kind of getting messy and just getting a little too, the compressor will grab that as well, which again is what happened there. So I'm going to go back and do this. Now, here's the thing, is what this particular demo, this part I should say, is demonstrating what you could do going into the front end of your amp before you ever went in here, or what you could do using Universal Audio's console application and then copying those settings over. The benefit of it is you're not, quote unquote, printing that to the recording, but you can take the exact same settings, then load them on a plug-in and be able to adjust that in the framework of the mix. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to solo the, let's get over here, and I'm going to solo the guitar and the bass. Like, where is the bass? There we go. Come on. I want to bring you over here. And this, by the way, is Angeline. Angeline's going to hang out with the guitar players. So there that is, and I'm going to have the compression bypass. And I'm also going to create a slightly, by the way, you can just kind of see what's going on there. So I can see how big that range I've got looped is. And I'm going to go to right here. And I'm going to, first of all, set that on the grid. I'm going to go to 45 is what I'm looking for. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a marker that's called 45. And now I'm going to, now I actually like what I'm doing on the guitar. I'm going to actually get rid of the bass for a second. I'm going to play the second half of the guitar thing with the compressor off and this compressor on. and you're going to hear how it's affecting the body in particular. And then basically what I'm doing, I'm selecting from 45. I'm hitting with the mouse, that is. I'm hitting the shift key, and then I'm hitting breakdown, which we're not getting to, but that allows me to select that range, which you can kind of see right there. Up here, that's going to be, you can see it in black, but more importantly, I know I selected it. Compressor off, then on. Compressor off, then on. I'm actually going to do it from here. Hold on. 50, 45, 49. Hold on. 49. There we go. I'm going to take that selection right there. Oh, hold on. 49. By the way, you get used to counting a lot of 4s here. So enter 49. Thank you. All right. This is the section where you're going to hear the body impacted most by the compressor. All right, so as I was doing that this morning in preparation for you, I was really amazed as I kind of got in and started to mess with the compressor, how much it didn't just tame the transients, but actually allowed me to take some of the mud out of the guitars out of there, which is not how I normally think about a compressor. And now what we're going to get a chance to do, first of all, hang on, let me just say hello to Jerry. Good morning, my friend. Thanks for joining us. Hello. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate kind of what happens in the framework of working with the bass. We're going to start off with, first of all, we're going to have that same selection. There we go. Why am I, oh, there we go. Oh, I'm in the wrong app. Hang on. There we go. I want to get over to this Pro Tools window. So we're going to have the guitar bypassed. We're adding the bass. Oh, sorry, the compressor bypassed. We're adding the bass. All right, I'm actually going to take this point right here. I'm going to give you the whole selection here because it's going to give you a better chance. There it was a little less obvious. As the whole part is playing, I'm going to go from, I'm going to go to 45, which is basically half of the chorus segment, or, yeah. And I'm going to have the compressor off, but it's going to allow you to hear the guitar and the bass are kind of fighting. Here we go. So that little bit of EQ that you get from there is a really huge benefit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the whole mix, and I'm going to do the same thing. Compression off on the guitar, that is. Here we go. Sorry, that was me saying that needs to be 44, not 45. Okay, cancel. Okay, thank you. Delete. All right, so now that we've got a better point, and this guy needs to now be 48. I'll fix that in a minute. All right, so the deal is that, hold on, let me look at you. Here's looking at you, kid. That ability to make the guitar without actually adding actual EQ, just kind of trim it down a little bit, is not a way that I would traditionally use compression. But here's the thing, is like every amplifier has, if you will, a footprint, some of which you can get to with all the EQ, and some of which to kind of create the way the amp works and quote unquote flows. You just kind of, sometimes there'll be certain frequencies that you, in the process of making the overall sound, you just can't totally get to. One of the videos that's forthcoming, and what we're going to probably do in one of the coming weeks, possibly next week, is talk about EQ. And this is a D. What the heck are you? This is an Alesis DEQ 230D, and basically it is a huge graphic EQ that's in stereo. And the great thing about it is it's digital, so I can create presets and I can call those up via MIDI. It's actually pretty darn cool. There's a guy on the Boogie board who desperately wants to buy that from me because they're no longer made. They're uber rare, and it's pretty cool. So I'm trying to decide if I'm going to keep it or not. So the point being, though, is EQ is where we move things out of the way. So a lot of mixing is done with EQ, but in terms of compression, that'll, again, there's certain things where you want gain in certain parts of your frequency spectrum, and in the process, there are other parts of the frequency spectrum that you don't necessarily want to lose that frequency, but it can get muddy. So you can't, if you think about the equivalent of a multi-band distortion pedal, you could choose bands at which, it's actually a really great idea. I think I've seen something like that. But the idea is you can literally kind of select your bands and then on the band control choose how much or how little distortion actually occurs at that spot. That's kind of groovy. All right. So Pro Tools questions. Pro Tools only available at a subscription pricing. Can you buy the application outright? You used to be able to buy it outright, and then, of course, everybody's moved to the subscription model so they can, I'm not going to use that word, they can gently remove dollars from your pocket every month. And in many ways, that's a win, because if you find that you stop using it, then you're not out the subscription amount. The other thing, when you make a purchase, traditionally, the purchases don't have a tendency, depending, to have lifetime updates. Where the subscription model, kind of, again, how they hook you in, is you get updates as long as your subscription is active. One of the things you can do is, of course, if you can pause your subscription and come back into it. Great question. And by the way, all recording questions, because so much of what we do, many of us, are on our own making music. So these questions matter. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate the other type of leveling that we do. So we're going to introduce on the stereo bus, where all this stuff is traveling through. We're going to get a chance to hear how, with the Oxford limiter, I'm just going, hey, nothing gets above this thing. And in turn, that will create some compression, because, again, above a certain threshold, it's lopping the top off. So, Spencer, I'm going to come back to you in just a minute. Well, hang on a second. Another question. I used to use the stereo configuration, high bass and a high treble, low mids. Later, I read that mids out through the band mix and keep the bass go. Any hard rules? Are you talking about for guitar? Are you talking about for the mix? Please clarify. Looks like a great question, as always. All right, so now you're going to hear me just add the Oxford limiter on the stereo bus. We'll start with it off. You'll see. Well, you'll see. Here we go. And there we go. Okay. So that right there is the magic of limiting. Uh, Basically, limiting is an extreme amount of compression where basically can't get above. You basically set a threshold, like we talked about. You set your threshold point, and then you choose how much a compression ratio you want. And basically, at that point, you're saying nothing gets above that particular amount. Why that really matters is preparing your mixes to put on a Pro Tools or what you're going to send out. If you're doing something like a live stream. So if you're sending it out for just audio, if you're sending it out for video, married with audio, whether it's a live stream or YouTube video, you want to be really conscious. The other thing is if you're sending it to a NLE, non-linear editor, to do your video editing, there are some nuances. I use an application called DaVinci Resolve, which is from the Black Magic design folks, aka BMD, and they don't like to see anything above -5 dB. Generally, in the past, I've always just kind of gone -4 dB. That's where I would set my ceiling, where if you will, it doesn't get any louder than that. So in particular, I'm going to play that again. I want you to listen to my favorite singular instrument other than guitar, which is the snare drum. And we're going to play it without, then we're going to play it with, and just listen to the sound of the snare drum coming through. The snare drum is, it being clear, it for me has an emotional thing. It makes me feel better. The more I hear a great sounding snare, it's an emotional thing. It's audio. If I play some really nasty sound, it's going to make you feel crappy. If you hear some sound that's pleasing, it's going to make you feel better. All right, let me head back over here. Listen for the snare drum, pretty please. Boom. Pro Tools is a little angry at me because I'm live streaming at the same time, so it's having a little hissy fit there. All right, so that's snare drum poking through the mix. Hang on a second. Typos. Always keep the bass low. I was dropped as a child. That's funny. Boogie Segway. It looks like you've got the Mark 7 sitting there. Using it for anything. Well, I was supposed to be using it with this. Thank you very much, Albert. Skunk Bastard talked about his rhythm playing, and I always look for locked it to the snare. It's a good place to be. It's the every place to be. What's going on, Will? How you doing? Jollibee Fried Chicken Celebration for you. Thank you so much. Look at that flying V. Hello, hello, hello. All right, so first of all, so let's take that little left turn that Spencer took us on. I'm going to solo the guitar and the drums. I'm going to keep the good stuff on, but in particular, listen to how good or bad a job I did of really locking into the drums. Now, there are 3 nuances that you want to pay attention to with the drums. Number 1, the kick drum, if you look at it on the grid, will almost always be right smack. That is, say, in the editing window. Hang on. Let me get over here. Hang on a second. Let's get over here. Let's get over to the edit window. Pro Tools, edit window. You're going to see that basically you can set this up such that there is a... If I kind of go from... and here I can put this in a couple of different modes. In this particular sense, I've got it on a grid. So, and you can set up what subdivision the grid is at. So if I set the grid at quarter notes, and I kind of go like this, every single one of those is going to land. Get out of the way there. Thank you. And if you take a look, well, look at. All right, so I am zoomed way the heck in right there. But that right there. Oh, sorry, that's our snare drum. Hang on a second. Hold on. Hold on. Give me a moment. Let me find... Oh, let's go here. Turn off grid. Thank you. Solo drums. All right, so he's just a little tiny bit ahead of the grid there. But the deal is that generally speaking, as you look at your kick and your snare, the snare can be pulled back a little bit in the time. So hang on. So this is not the best visual example of that, but this is super important for those of you that play with a real drummer. And it's actually in any of the DAWs that actually have kind of drum loops. The kick drum generally is going to be right smack on the grid there. The snare drum can, depending on the style, be pulled back in two main dimensions. Number one is there's just lean. That's say if you're 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2, 4. Then if it's got swing to it, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, or so the combination of whether it's a straight feel, as in 1 and 2 and 3 and, or it's 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3. Those are swung eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and those are straight eighth notes. 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3. Those are swung eighth notes, and you can kind of navigate between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 3, 2, 3. That point in between of how far swung it's out and how far it is swung out. And there are some drum applications that literally allow you to slide how much swing it's got in there. I think there's a delay that allows you to do that too. But the point being is that snare drum is informing you how far you need to kind of know to lean back in the groove. The kick drum is saying here is where the downbeats are, or I should say, generally speaking, amongst other things, saying this is the beginning of the measure. The snare drum is telling you how much relaxation is there, and then or lack thereof. And then the hi-hat is, first of all, the hi-hat, if you're looking for the third thing, is if you listen to the intensity of the hi-hat or the cymbals, that is generally, in addition to how hard the snare drum is going to tell you how intense the dynamics are of the section. So as you're kind of riding the drummer like a horse, you're listening for making sure you're locking with the kick drum. Make sure that is to say, as you're kind of going, this is where the pulse is, and then the snare drum's telling you how much lean and swing there is. So that's kind of where our groove actually lives, and we want to be living with that. And then in turn, the hi-hat is telling us about the intensity. Let's see how I'm doing here. All right, bring it up, and there we go. And I'm going to switch to the other window. And so this is just going to be me and Zorro. All right, so the magic part of that is my instinct when I play that part is to rush. But I can hear as I'm listening to it, I'm going, oh, that's the sound of me having rushed, listening back to the track, going, okay, lean back a little bit from where you want to play it in your overexcitement where you're leaning ahead, and really listen to the snare drum as you're doing that. And that's one of the things that's there. Good morning. There we go. Mark, pleasure to see you, my friend. Hello. 1% Skinnerd. Come on. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the bass back into that mix there. And I'm going to start, first of all, let's just listen to the bass. No, now what we're going to listen for is this guy right here. There we go. So what you haven't heard yet is the SSL G-Bus compressor. And basically what this is a compressor that's specifically designed to live on the master fader here. And I've placed it before the limiter. What I'm doing with the limiter here is I'm just saying, hey, the mix can't get any louder than wherever I set this to be. So generally when I'm doing this to put out to video, it's going to be -5 dB. This guy allows me, where this will add some compression because it can't get any louder, so it squishes anything above the threshold. This guy does a similar thing, but in a slightly more groovalicious way. So the threshold is set 2 to 1, so it's not a huge amount of compression in terms of when it's above the threshold, which right now I've actually got set at positive 15 dB. So it's not hitting it with that much compression. Again, it's 2 to 1, and I've got the threshold pretty high. So I'm going to start off with it off, and you'll see when I turn it on. Hang on, I'm going to create a marker at 40 here. Okay, hold on. 40, thank you. All right. All right. Oh, I did it twice. Okay, there we go. So that's going to enable me to make a smaller loop. So here we are. Sorry. So you'll hear it the first time through with it off and then on. Lots of glue. It's going to completely change the mix in a great way. All right, that right there, for me at least, is magic. And so what's happening is that it's got a very small ratio, so it's not compressing it that much, and the threshold is set super high, but what it's doing there is creating glue in the mix that is just magic. So it's not just listening for the initial transients, as we demonstrated with the guitars. It's also listening where, if you will, the hips are a little wide at different places in the frequency spectrum, and it's pulling things in, and it is just magic. And that's where, if you're spending time recording and you've got all this stuff and you're like, gosh, it feels and sounds sloppy, this is one of the best ways to address that. Dr. Phil, thanks so much. Warming up in Texas. There you go. I heard it's always hot in Texas. All right. So, all that to say, compression. First of all, Mike Rand, are you still here? My man, are you still here, Mike Rand? My compression buddy. And regardless, does anybody have any questions? The thing about compression is that it is something that I use in a couple of very specific ways. Again, generally, I don't use it on my most distorted tones. There are times that I do. I have a tendency to use it on cleaner tones most commonly, to create that little bit of squash and that beautiful. It also adds some jangle, because you hear a little bit, while it tames some of the initial transient of the pick attack, you still get some of that. So as opposed to hearing the thwack of the pick, it tames it down a little bit. So you get you can hear, if you will, the bloom of the notes come on, because the transient is a little bit quieter. You can hear the effect of the transient's attack on the strings as the string kind of opens and closes, which is a kind of a unique thing. And there are a couple of different places that I use compressors in the signal chain. I'm going to, that actually comes from the bouncer. So the deal is that most of the time when guitar players use a compressor, especially these days, it's going to be on a pedal on the floor. In the back there is the Waza compressor from Boss, of course. And that one I'm actually using in the effects loop. And the idea is that just like we're using it here in post, if you will, quote unquote, or in the mix, it allows you to kind of, again, lop off some transients, which if you're looking for some big kind of chimey, jangly, washy, more in the Andy Timmons area for some of those cleans, you're just allowing it so it's not quite as brittle, not necessarily bright, but it feels warmer. And warmth, by the way, sometimes it means less trouble, but also sometimes it also means that we're getting rid of some of the mud. So that is to say, if you get rid of some of the rumbly stuff that's down below, you start to hear some of the warmth that's actually there. So you're not just only curbing what's happening at the transient, you're kind of massaging what's happening with the bad end of that. What's going on, Clean Tone Burnett? Great to see you. Hello, hello. Welcome to this live stream. Thanks for tuning in. Questions are welcome. Stuff is so over my head, but you explain it, everything so well. It's always a learning experience sitting with you with great pleasure, my friend. And the great thing is, the thinking out loud and looking at my compressors. Part of there we go. Come on. Oh, there we go. Hold on. There we go. I was going for that. Awesome. I look forward to hearing it. I haven't heard it yet. Okay, serious question. How essential is having a soundboard? Is it to have a soundboard guy? I've had more negative experiences than positive. Let me finish this little statement. I'm going to come back and answer that great question. With a range of a multitude of real life experiences, when I look at this compressor, and this is kind of one of the things that I've been having this conversation with my students, is that, for example, when I look at that shape, noting that it says G and 3 indicating that it's G down here at the 3rd fret, your average guitar player just has a tendency to think I'm strapping this shape on at that G note on the low E string. If I want to do it in A, I strap it onto there. Heading back to the key of G, and this is going to be a left turn, but we're going to come back to this as it matters, as it relates to this analogy coming. If I take the key of G major, G, hold the A, hold the B, have to C, hold the D, hold the E, hold the F sharp, have to G. I think there are a lot of guitar players that know that those are the notes of G major. And if in turn you take those first 3 notes, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, that you kind of in the background know, well, okay, I guess that is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, C, B, A, G, F sharp, E, D, C, B, A, G, F sharp, E, D, C, B, A, G. But your average guitar player would be really hard pressed to go, oh, that's an F sharp. It's the G. There's the F sharp. There's the E. That's a C. That's an A. No, that's not an A. That's a B. And you know that from tuning the B string. But the point being is that in addition to that, seeing this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. My guess is, if I asked everybody right now, even though I just said it a minute ago, what the top note of G major 3 note per string, that fingering actually is, most guitar players would be like, versus actually going, oh, that's C, and that's where having that awareness of these note names becomes valuable. And so it's a combination of not only recognizing the shapes, and something that I love to refer to as shapeology, which we'll talk about more in a moment, because I've always got to have a little guitar lesson moment in here. But the other thing is being able to go, okay, right, this has this shape because it is going G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, so on and so forth of the G major scale. That in turn creates a shape. Now here's something really groovy that I'm going to share with you. And this is something that's going to be a big part of the 15-minute fundamentals course that I'm working on. That's obviously the first 6 notes of the G major scale. Well, if this is G, A, B, C, D, E, that's going to be F sharp. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. In the key of G, that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th mode is Locrian. If I played the first 6 notes of the Locrian mode, I can think of that shape as 7. So I've now gone 1, 7. You want to guess what number that's going to be? 1, 7. 1. Going backwards, 7. I guess that makes it a 6. So literally you can look at the first 6 notes of the G major 3-note string modes. And you're going to get, and actually be able to go, okay, 1, 7, 6, 6, 7, 1. And gosh darn it, I guess that means this is going to be 2, 1, 7. And it's going to be 3, 2, 1. That, ladies and gentlemen, is shapeology. When I saw that after, I don't know, playing these guys for decades, I went like, oh, holy flipping cow. But wait, there's more, but we're not going to talk about that today. But I want you to just kind of sit with that and realize, first of all, the 7th note in the key of G is, I guess if you go to the 1 and count backwards, that would be an F sharp, which means if I know this goes 1, 7, and I know that the key of G goes G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, and that's 7, I know that's going to be an F sharp. And so that just allows me to be informed. If I know it's F sharp, I know it's a 7. So that's going to go 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I actually know what the note names are. And in looking at that shape, I can look at the shape and I can see a bunch of things happening in the background. Analogous to that, and sharing with people, Tony, thank you for that feedback, which I really appreciate, in a way that everybody can relate to, because, it's like, wow, I've looked at that shape all this time and I never really saw all that. I get paid to do, hey, there's all this stuff there, and helping other guitar players kind of see that stuff, which is flipping great. It's the greatest gig ever. It's one thing to get paid to, have people adulate, as you're playing your music. It's another thing to get paid to help other people get better on their instrument. It's kind of like the kind of everybody wins scenario. So as I look at these different devices, just like as I kind of look at these things, chances are for a number of the people that I know, there are people that end up on either end of the spectrum. But as you kind of begin to look across the, having been one of the session guys on Guitar Hero, I not only had to kind of get the tones dialed in that were representative enough of the parts, but I also had to get them into the recording device so that as people were playing the game, they could kind of have the fantasy experience that they were playing the actual guitar part, right? So it means that it needed to be recorded well enough. I'm not the world's greatest engineer. I do not profess to be. But I profess to have a lot of experience of recording guitars, and with all the gear demo work I've done, it's allowed me to have a lot of experience getting these things into that box there. All right, let me get back over here real quick. Eric, have fun with that, my friend. Isn't that groovy? So here's the thing: is that if you're an F sharp Locrian, what we would normally think about is the quote unquote leading tone of the relative major. It's actually going to be our tonic, right? So that is to say, the flat 7 of Locrian would be its leading tone. Now, I need to do a little bit of tiny bit of research. Traditionally, the leading tone refers to the 7th degree of the major scale, resolving to the 1. That is to say, and I apologize, I'm not plugged in here, but let's just say I'm going to go. Everybody's hearing, nah. So it's setting you up to go to the 1. But if we're in Locrian, it is the leading tone of Locrian. I need to do a little bit of discovery, and I need to make a note of this. Is the leading tone only referred to 15-minute fundamentals, leading tone? Leading tone. I'm going to presume that while it originally, Locrian, question mark, flat 7. Boom, boom, boom. So the deal is that, we're just going to presume for the sake of conversation that quality where it's the 7 of whatever mode you're at. It's a great place to kind of force tension that drives you to the resolution of the 1. But here's the thing, that same sort of thing, although we're not going to go, hey, hello, Chris. I wasn't sure if I was going to see you today. Yes, talking about compressors today. All right, hey, safe trip up to Atlanta, my metalhead friend. Okay, hang on a second. I never looked at that scale. I never looked at that scale that I know better than the back of my hand like that. No. So here's the thing. it's actually really obvious why most of us think like this. And this is the great thing about 15-minute fundamentals. And I'm having so much fun because I love teaching. Because, like this whole compressor talk, I did not have the prep time that I really wanted to today. But at the same time, with the Pro Tools track, I was able to kind of go, hey, here it is in the real world application where like using the 160 on the guitars as they sat in the mix really, although it was actually after the recorded guitar, was similar to how you might shape your tone going to the front end. Not identical, but similar. And then in turn, how you're using on the stereo bus, using limiting and a stereo bus compressor. That combination of three things is an integral part of my real world experience. Not so much putting compression actually on the guitars themselves, but I have a feeling moving forward after having spent that time preparing for you, I'm like, ooh, there's some magic there where, yes, you can get there via EQ, but just adding a little bit of compression can just kind of tame things and trim them down into their place where compression is important. And Spencer, you asked a question about treble and in EQ. I'm going to come back to that. So the thing is, most of us are, you'll hear me say this ad nauseum, when little Johnny or little Dougie walked into the music store for their first lesson, they scrawled on some piece of paper, and kind of the teacher, the stoner guitar teacher, they would scrawl something on a piece of paper with just the shape, and they would say that's the A minor pentatonic. And they put a little, red mark. If you were lucky, there was one there, and maybe you got one there and there. Other than that, you had no idea what the scale was other than the shape. So we kind of like, cool. So you kind of went, okay, cool. It's a shape. I kind of move up and down the shape, and I find the sounds. That is how we think about scales. No duh. And because when we first learn a chord, they give us a chord. They say, all right, that's an A major. They don't tell you what an A major actually is. They don't actually go, hey, there's this thing called the major scale. And if you were to take the first, third, and fifth notes, that's where chords are from, the chord stork, if you will. And if we're in the key of A major, if we take this major scale here, instead of playing it there, we play it here. And we take its first, third, and fifth notes. That's the same note. Repeat an octave above. This guy right here is the 5. That is the 3 in the second octave. And that guy right there is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the second octave. And that's 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1 as it relates to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. That's not hard to understand. It's like, oh, I get it. Chords are bits and pieces of scales played at the same time. But that is the antithesis of how 99.9% of us are taught how to do this. So guess what? In the same way we go like, I don't know, I play the shape at A. B flat, great. But if we want to lock this and start playing it, I don't know, B flat, A flat, F, E flat, D flat, and actually be able to kind of meander up and down the neck. And this is, what I'm talking about. For those of us that live today, all of a sudden I'm playing it at B flat, everything's in the wrong place. The dots are in the wrong places. It was like, no, actually, we're just kind of going 1 flat 3 4 5 flat 7 1. So the analogies that relates to this is, as I look at this gear, the things that I have a tendency to see mean something because there's certain applications that I've just learned in using them repeatedly. All right. Oh, boy, look at these, all sorts of good stuff here. That is very cute. There you go. You're just a guy that could fix it if you needed to. Good morning, Eric Andrew Vaughn, also known as Eric Stevie Ray Vaughn. In a future live stream, Eric is one of my favorite students. because he always pushes me to do, I won't say his thing, but he always has, if as a teacher, you have the soundness of mind of going, I'm not just vomiting information out to my students, next student, next student. You're actually kind of going, one of the things, especially in what I'm trying to do to step into the next phase of my quote unquote career as a music educator, it's like I'm really trying to going, what's your pain point? What's hurting you? And so Eric and I are always kind of, there's this conversation about ear training and really making sense of the guitar. So we did this thing this past week that was one of my favorite lessons, and honestly, for me, one of the most inspirational lesson exchanges ever, which is how to resolve as one of the biggest pain points that guitar players have is when they're soloing, quote unquote, it feels like they're running scales instead of playing notes. And this actually happens from two different directions. One is just like we don't necessarily know which notes to aim for because we're not taught. Let's just say, well, we did this last week. Well, we took that G major chord and kind of played some notes around. And went, oh, okay, I'm playing around that shape. But as you play across a chord progression, you're not just resolving to that one chord. So we had this great lesson where I came up with a chord progression that I'm not going to go through, but it really was a springboard for going, snap, I think I figured out how I can better help guitar players run through a chord progression and find the chord tones, both measuring the amount of tension and resolution, as well as I figured out one of the challenges that lick players have as well. Because if you go wheelie, 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 bonk, most of our licks are played. Well, guess what happens when I play that note over? That's the 4 of the 5 1. It doesn't sit well because we're playing. Not only you could think of it as the wrong lick in the wrong place, but really what's happening is we could play that. If we know to take any lick that we might normally play for the most part, but just choose where your ending note is and actually know, oh, hey, I'm resolving over an A, I'm resolving over D, I'm resolving over D. I'm like, oh. So that is to say, there are people that just like, I'm running up and down the scale and I don't quite know, where to stop and start. Versus lick players who, they're like, I play this lick and it fits well and I play it again and it doesn't fit over that chord. It's because the resolution tone isn't lining up with the resolution tones for the chord you're playing over. But kind of deconstructing the why of that, like, took, kind of Eric, Stevie Ray Vaughan. So thank you for that. Shane, good morning, my friend. Mike Mitchell, I look forward to seeing you next week. All right, so that is to say, all right, Spencer, let's get back to this question. I struggled over my teaching career to explain natural minor, not too hard, harmonic minor, Ingres playground, and melodic minor, where my students glaze over. What ended up happening is in the midst of trying to get all this stuff dialed, I pulled all the plugs on everything. So I apologize that it's going to be a little quiet. So here's, one of the things about all of this. As guitar players, we're creating moods. So that's the natural minor, right? And if we want to add a little more color to the minor scale, so one of the places I would start would be, I would hold a minor chord and just go, hey, you can play natural minor. You can play harmonic minor, which is a minor scale. Sorry, backing up a step. We're in the key of A. A major. Well, hold on. Let me back up a step. C major. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. As in C, hold the D, hold the E, F to F, hold G, hold the A, hold the B, F to C. If we march that bit of business down to A and go A, that's 1, hold the 2, hold the 3, F to 4, hold the 5, hold the 6, hold the 7, F to 1. That's why it's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. If we march that down to A, as in 1, hold the 2, hold the 3, F to 4, hold the 5, hold the 6, hold the 7, F to 1. That's A, hold the B, hold the C sharp, half to D, hold the E, hold the F sharp, hold the G sharp, half to A. If you move a half step or a whole step in either direction, it takes the next adjacent note name and number. A, hold the B. Well, from B to C is a half step, but we need to, and we're going from the 2 to 3, it's a whole step. C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. So if we take that and we go, all right, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, and we say, hey, the minor scale has a flat 3, flat 6, and flat 7. Those notes are going to be A, B, C instead of C sharp, D, E, F instead of F sharp, G instead of G sharp, and A, as in A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, which we can play like this, or, so we could play this chord and play and know where that came from. We can also go, hey, instead of going 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1, we can go 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, 7, 1. We can also go 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And it just allows you to have another, color, if you will. But the point being is that letting people just play it over the tonic triad, because the thing is that playing over a minor major 7, that scares people off. That is to say, if you played the natural minor scale and took its first, third, fifth, and seventh degrees, that would give you a minor 7 chord. If you go to play that for harmonic minor, you're going to get this minor major 7. That is to say, it's a minor 7 chord, but we've taken the flat 7 and turned it into a natural 7. It's really, for a lot of people, they're like, can we play something else versus this? Sorry. Flat 6. Or with the natural 6. So I just went kind of the 2, 5, flat 3, 6, 4, natural 7. All right, you get the point. And again, I apologize that I managed to not get it together to have the amp plug in, but, well, I failed again. Hey, Tom, you know what? I've been missing you, my brother. Great to see you. I've been thinking I haven't seen my buddy Tom for a minute. Welcome, my friend. To you. Great to see you. Juan, hola, ¿cómo está? ¿Dónde, I probably was, where the heck is your amp, dickhead? Great. Well, I know where my amp is. It's a matter of my volume. Ubicas. Hold on a second. Tom, always a pleasure, my friend. All right, Ubicas. Hold on. What the heck is an Ubicas? N-U-B-I-C-A-S. All right, hold on a second. Location. Ubicas. Muy bien. Estoy en, I'm near, estoy cerca San Francisco. ¿Y usted? Y hola, mi amigo. Bienvenidos. All right. That's about as bilingual as I get. Okay, so here's the thing. To your point, I've fallen in love with the Locrian mode. If I play a diminished chord as a tonic chord, people are going to run. They're going to be like, can you please never do that ever at the tonic? It just sounds... Nobody really wants to hear that, or at least most people don't want to hear that. But the Locrian mode... I actually prefer the sound of it. So sometimes just kind of making things a little bit simpler. So if you wanted to... creating a very simple thing. I'm just the one, the octave, and the flat 3. Sorry. That was going to the natural 5. We're just trying to get some dyadic. I realize that's kind of microphonically tiny. You know what? I know one little thing I could do to solve that instantly. All right. Sorry, basically everything I've got is set up to go direct, and in the process of not getting my compressor hooked up back there, but I can do this. There we go. So, sorry. So Locrian mode, 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. So again, if you sit there and play this chord, most people don't really want to hear it. But if you can kind of find a way, but play the A flat. I play another A flat. Snuck in an E there as well. Locrian's actually a really beautiful scale. Oh, now that's another way you could get there. So the Locrian one's got a flat 6. Sorry. Brain on. 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 5, flat 6. So if I go like this, that chord's actually very pleasing sounding. Now, there is a great example of muscle memory and visual memory as well. This is one of the challenges. A little bit earlier, I talked about those of us that get used to playing A minor pentatonic. We go to B flat. The notes are in the wrong place, right? Or I should say the dots are in all the wrong places. But once you kind of play in a key long enough, like that E for the key of A, major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, mixed Lydian, and minor all have that natural 5. Where Locrian has the flat 5. So you just, if you're playing in A, we're so used to playing that E natural, you just got to be really conscious, like, oh, okay, let me not hit that. Let me say that again. Guitar players, we spend a ton of time in A. It's a great key. But if we have something that deviates from the minor pentatonic and 6 of the 7 modes, it deviates from all of that, it's going to be something that your finger is going to be inclined to kind of, oh, I keep wanting to go. You just got to aim for it. And just kind of be conscious you're coming down the neck, right? I'm aiming for E flat and not E natural. This is one of the advantages also of kind of being able to go, hey, all right, there's my Locrian shape. We were talking about that a little bit before, and that's going to be A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A. So we don't just kind of go, oh, I played I played that note. I don't know what that is. Well, I played a natural 5 instead of a flat 5. I played an E instead of an E flat. Just gives us what I like to refer to, I haven't said it for a while, a handle. Just, we could look at the scale and kind of go, I don't know how to grab it. Well, handles allow us to kind of, well, hang on, let me take a look at that thing and inspect it. Okay, got it, all right? So instead of going, I'm going, as in, 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1, 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. All right, let's see here. That will be the funniest thing anybody says all day. I love that. Very simply put, walk over to the piano and play all the white keys. You end up with C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Ground level. Got it. That sets in place 3 important principles. The sound of the major scale. I could play that anywhere. And as I think about that sound, heading back to the key of C, take my word for it, that's all the white keys starting at C. We want to have a way of describing the distances both internally and intervallically from the root. So that right there, if I went to the, first of all, backing up one other step, so there's a sound. So we want to have ways of describing each of these notes here, the distances between them, and their distance from the root. That's like 90% of the most important stuff, because there we go, okay, if this is the first note, I guess that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Okay, great. Well, it's a different amount of distance as I move between the 3 and 4 than when I move between the 1 and the 2 or the 2 or the 3. We're going to agree that if I move 2 frets, that's a whole step. Another whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And collectively, that allows you to kind of go, okay, if I'm going to measure the major scale, it goes 2 wholes and a half, 3 wholes and a half. And if you think about it, I don't know, that's the first note. I can call that 1, hold to 2, hold to 3, half to 4, hold to 5, hold to 6, hold to 7, half to 1. In turn, we can think of that as C, hold the D, hold the E, half to F, hold the G, hold the A, hold the B, half to C. We get a sound. We thought about the distances internally. If we think about this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. 1, hold a 2, hold a 3, half to 4, hold a 5, hold a 6, hold a 7, half to 1. Which then if we translate into the note names, which you already got for free with the key of C, C, hold a D, hold the E, half to F, hold a G, hold the A, hold a B, half to C. Great. The half steps occur between the 3 and the 4 and the 7 and the 1. So no matter where I play the scale, it goes 1, hold a 2, hold a 3, half to 4, hold a 5, hold a 6, hold a 7, half to 1. We can play it linearly. That was D, by the way. Or we can play it laterally. 1, hold a 2, hold a 3, half to 4, hold a 5, hold a 6, hold a 7, half to 1. Same sound. But the great thing is because we can think about it not only as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, we can all think of it as D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. We can actually know that this is A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. And this is D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. And this is B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. And this is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. We just learned to navigate it like that. The only part that's complicating, that isn't that hard, is if I take that G major scale and instead of going from G to G, I go from A to A and B to B. Same 7 notes. I'm just starting off of each degree. That's where the modes come from. One other layer just built on top of it. If I take the first, third, and fifth notes of the first mode, gives me that chord. First, third, and fifth notes of the second mode, that chord. First, third, and fifth of that. As I take that major scale, I take its first, third, and fifth notes. That's where that by the way, that's a G, B, and a D. That's a G, B, and a D. Just knocked them up. Same 3 notes. So G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp diminished, and G major is what pulling the major scale started off of each of its 7 degrees, which is the modes, and pulling the first, third, and fifth note out of each one of those. And that gives us chords. And the great thing about these particular chords is there's a very unique order that they flow in. Major, hold a minor, half to major, hold a major, hold a minor, hold diminished, half to major. And there's certain relationships like the 2 minor chords a whole step apart at the 1, 2, and 3, as in 1, 2, 3. The minor chord with a major chord a half step above it between the 3 and the 4, and the 2 major chords at the 4 and the 5. Why does that matter? That allows you to kind of go, hey, if I can recognize I see 2 major chords a whole step apart, which many chord progressions have, is in, oh, 2 major chords a whole step apart, I guess that makes that 4, that makes that 5, which I guess means that's 6. Now if we went, all right, well, we started the major scale off of its 6th note, well, take my word for it, that was major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, mixed Lydian minor. Oh, 6th chord, 5 chord, 4, 5, resolves at the 6th, the name of the 6th mode, major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, mixed Lydian minor. Oh, okay. I'm in the key of A minor. And that's kind of like the big enchilada right there. And so literally it's this set order of chords that is the roast beef, turkey, and bologna of chords. Roast beef, turkey, turkey, roast beef, turkey, bologna, and roast beef. And in turn, on top of your roast beef, sorry, I can add other things. But the meat of the sandwich is what you're kind of augmenting, which is, I should say, you're adding elements of chords, and that is really it. But this major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major, that is where the money is. 99% of the time, you just look for those exclusive relationships, like the 2 minor chords a whole step apart, or a minor chord with a major chord a half step above it, or 2 major chords a whole step apart. And you're going to see that in your chord progression. You're going to know that it's there. Looking at things that have a bass note movement and no chords, a little bit more challenging, but not rocket science. But I'm not going to go there today. Sean Varley, I had a classical teacher explain the melodic minor scales going back to the days when the choir ruled. It was easy to sing smooth whole steps ascending and descending. So there are some rules in classical music about ascending and then descending that I actually don't know about. Going up, you go up harmonic minor, but you descend natural minor. It was one of the things that I didn't learn that rule. As it works on guitar, we go up and down doing the same thing. Generally speaking, that is, unless we're changing modes purposely Doesn't matter whether we're ascending or descending. There are certain rules that classical music had. If you're going to go up, you've got to do this particularly. There's a certain set bass movements. For example, blues kind of has its 1, 4, and 5 for the most part. That's kind of a set motify rule about of the majority of blues until you get into so you can also have minor blues, but I'm kind of playing a Dorian blues. All right, so I'm going to have some fun here. Somebody's going to have fun with this progression. I'm playing an A minor 7, then I'm playing a D9. Basically, that's a 1, 3, flat 7, and a 9. So, Brett, first of all, I took this major chord here, and I added, from the Mixolydian mode, its 7th note. That gives me a dominant 7 chord. And if I take the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1, 2, and I took that 2 and I played it either in that octave or that octave there, that becomes a 9. Number of notes in the major scale, 7. Add that to the 2, 4, or 6, it becomes 9, 11, and 13. That chord right there is a D9. That's a 1, 3, flat 7, 9. So there's my A minor 7, D9, and this guy, that's an E minor 7, but for a little bit of movement. Thank you. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to go. So I wanted. That's gonna basically, so we're playing over that first. A Dorian. Then that's going to be you could also nice for melodic minor again. A Dorian. Still an A Dorian. A melodic minor. Okay. So, hey, it's about time. After the eggs. Melissa and I were at the store yesterday, and we were checking out, and the chicken came through the scanner first, and I said, well, the chicken came before the egg. In any case, all right. Hey, I've got to prepare for my day of lessons here. This has been a lot of fun. I hope it has been of value to you. What's going to happen increasingly in Doppler's Gear Garage, we're going to have kind of one type or piece of gear, chicken picking. Well, we actually picked the chickens before we took them to the checkout line. So, awesome. So, Mike, great. Hey, there is a ton of stuff specifically for y'all, because you were like, oh, please, compressor. And I think you got here a little bit later, which of course is fine because it's Saturday. There's stuff going on. But there's going to be, Eric, thank you. Have a great day. But there's going to be, you're going to see that, Spencer, thank you. I always appreciate your questions. And you. There's going to be a kind of compressor video. that is in many ways going to reflect, the what we did. Albert, there we go. Come on, awesome, with great pleasure, my friend. Thanks for that. Tom, always a pleasure. Rock on, my dear friend. Great to see you. Oh, Nandini, there you go. I was wondering if I was going to see you. I joined late, but thankful. Glad you did. So that little bit, the funny thing is I'm always thinking about the different people that kind of stream in and stream out. I thought, you know what, Nandini would have really liked that little bit because it's just, Nandini loves chords and moods. There's so much moodiness going on there. Just really love that. Oh, with pleasure. There we go. Griffin. Thanks so much, my dear friend. Always a pleasure. All right, I'm getting a notification here. Tony, thank you, my dear friend. Again, like I said, always a pleasure. What better thing do I have to do on a Saturday morning than hang with you? So thanks for that privilege. By the way, next week I'm probably going to have a conversation about EQ because, in the framework of compression, one of my immediate takeaways, Armando. Hola or hello. Yes and yes. And so there are, you know what? I'm going to have to go in just a quick second, but I can grab these guys. It's actually not the guy that, oh, there we go. So this guy, and this is one of the other things is that I'm also going to be doing a bunch more stuff on recording for guitar because it's something I'm passionate about. But it's also something folks like Nandini are really hungry about. This is the Cab M Plus from Two Notes. And so the magic of this box is multifold. First of all, on one of the sides here, there's a USB cable. And this comes with an application called Two Notes Wall of Sound. And one of the things that I have done, and I actually did it with the Petrucci amps and my Cab Clone IRs as well as the Petrucci amps, using the stock. It's Cab Clone DI, so it's basically a cabinet emulation versus an IR. And I've also used a bunch of the others that are here. But the cool thing about the Two Notes is they have officially authorized Mesa Boogie cabinets that are in there. You basically run this guy in line. This is kind of one of the topics we'll be talking about. There's a box here that is from a Mojo Tone, and it is a closed speaker cabinet that you can put mics into, but you can also have that thing enclosed so it dramatically reduces the amount of sound coming out of the enclosure because it's closed in, and basically you can, if you're so inclined, have the amp connected to an actual cabinet. And in turn, you take a tap off of it using the Cab M Plus. I've got Cab Clone IR on my brain. Cab M Plus, and in turn, you can change the cabinets, all of that stuff, kind of to fit your mix inside the DAW, which is a really, well, technically, it's not in it. It actually is instantiated inside the DAW. That's true. So what it enables you to do, well, it's instantiated on the way into the DAW. No, the way I use it with this, it's instantiated on the way into the DAW. Sorry, my bad. That is confusing. That is to say, this box sits in between the amplifier. The speaker cable runs through it on the way to an actual cabinet. This, you then take a feed off of this and you run that into your DAW. Through USB, you then can kind of change what algorithmically is happening inside this box, change out cabinets, mic placement, and all of that. But what's neat about this is not a load box. There's another Two Notes guy over there that's a load box, but this one, it really is just taking a tap that in turn then you can load different IRs and I think theirs are proprietary ones are dynamic IRs or dyne IRs, and then you can move the mic around and do all sorts of really groovy things that is unique to this particular universe. And there are other ways to do that. I love them all. Almost always, I'm using. You can't see them there, but over on the side of. There we go. You should be able to see it now. No. Okay. I wonder about now. No. Well, just above that little bin, there is a rack over there that's got my two cab clone IRs. That same technology is built into here. There's a cab clone DI, but you know, in a number of the different recordings, I'm either using the cab clone IR reactive load boxes that have set IRs that are loaded inside it, because those are basically great IRs in my favorite cabinets. Okay, hang on a second. Looking forward to the EQ session. Awesome. Thank you, Mike. You can use the Mesa Slave out with that's one of my favorite things about my Boogie Peeps. So thanks for that. Yes, again, if you've got the load on the cabinet. And I think, actually, the first time I used Cab Clone IR live, in fact, I know I did. My JP2C is... No, I don't know where it is. My JP2C is here. Somewhere. But basically what I did was I took, and I knew that, thank you, I was like, did I know that? Did I know that? Yes, I did. So I took this, for my live rig, this is a Seymour Duncan Power Stage 700. So for my live rig, what I did was I took, in fact, that's what I did with this guy as, hold on. No, that one I did something different on. Sorry, let me back up a step. Cab Clone IR can work without it necessarily being a no. That's not what I... I'm going to have to double check. But in the back of my head, one of my rigs was the JP2C. And one of the amps, the JP2C or the Mark 7, gives you the ability to set the amp such that it doesn't need to have a load on it. And that in turn, that is, it doesn't have to have a speaker cabinet. And in turn, I ran the slave out into Cab Clone IR. And Cab Clone IR I ran into, you can't see it, but it's down there, my Axe FX3. And then I came out of the Axe FX3 into the Seymour Duncan Power Stage 700. And then it came out in that pair of Mesa Boogie oversized 412 cabinets. And it was thunderous. The thing about the JP2C, it doesn't have Cab Clone IR. It's got Cab Clone DI, which is what's also in this. But I'm fairly certain that I used in one of the incarnations of my rig. There you go. There's a line in. And I took that coming from the slave output on the JP2C. And I don't know where I've lost my JP2C, but it's here somewhere. But my recollection was that that amp allowed me to make it so it would work, but you didn't have to have a load on it. In particular, such that you can use the slave out. Okay. All right. Always great to have extra cabinets at disposal. Looking into UA aux. Craving a real Mark 7 tone into the computer, but since it has Cab Clone, not thinking the UA aux is necessary. Okay, Cab Clone, come on. So yes, it was thunderous, and I think your setup, the Pinole gig. give me a second, Tom. I'm going to answer your question because there's meat on that bone. Um, for the for that. All right, hang on a second. Let me just answer this question, Tom. I'm going to come back. So UA aux, great question. There's the JP2C. Hang on. Did anybody say these things are heavy? I'm going to be off frame for just a second. Yes, okay. So on the back of the JP2C, there's a switch. So do me a favor, don't do this at home without checking your manual, but it's where the Cab Clone DI section is. There's a little switch that says speaker off. And in my understanding, that enables you to run the amp safely using the actual amp without having a quote-unquote load on it, which means it's not connected to a speaker cabinet. That means you could use the slave out, and that's how that rig I was running. I was coming out of the slave out into the Cab Clone IR, and then going out like I said, and that was actually a different rig. What was I doing with that? I don't remember exactly what I did at where I was taking my. Maybe I did have Cab Clone IR. For that particular gig, I don't remember what that rig was. In any case, thank you for that, Albert. That was a lot of fun. All right, so the JP2C is one of, I kind of go back. I love the Mark 7, but I think kind of the JP2C. If I could blend the Mark 7 and the JP2C together, that would be my favorite amp, as well as Badlanders. Rick Harrison, what's going on, my friend? Great to see you. With the exception of the Badlanders, which is what I are my go-to amps for the vocal project, but when I'm kind of doing the instrumental thing, I need a little bit more of the sound that I get out of the JP2C. But the JP2C, the clean channel, is not as groovy as the clean channel is in there, because what John does with his clean channel with compression, wait for it, that softens that up. But because of Dream Theater, there's all this sound, he needs a really tight clean channel. In any case. To answer your question, Tom, the aux amp top box, when last I checked, and I've got one that I will be selling, that I don't know if they've updated it, but basically to be able to do all the groovy stuff that you can do with most of your UA pedals. I actually had, I don't know if Heavenly, I think it does, where you can connect to that pedal from your phone. But the aux in its first generation, I don't think they've changed it. And I'm not talking about their little pedal. I'm talking about the rack guy. To make any kind of changes internally and kind of do the cool stuff you can do in your UA effects, it connects via 2.3 gigahertz Wi-Fi, which nobody has anymore. I suppose you could go to you could find an old 2.3 hertz Wi-Fi router and maybe use and create a LAN, a local area network, and get to it like that. But other than that, you basically can't do all the groovy, stuff where you're changing it out. The other big problem with the UA aux, and I love UA stuff greatly, as I understand that the reactive load in it, that is to say, the reactive load is built around that of a deluxe reverb. And the great thing about the Waza tube amp expander, which is Boss's unit, is you can fine tune the presence and the resonance to imitate the character and the signature of a number of different amplifiers. By the way, I just saw at NAMM, thanks to my friends at Premier Guitar, they just released the Waza Tube Amp Expander Core, which is a smaller version of the Waza Tube Amp Expander, which I can't wait to get my hands on. The great thing about the Waza Tube Amp Expander is you can set it at 4, 8, or 16 ohms, unlike the 2 notes torpedo. These guys. Literally these guys. Captor X. Our loader reactive load box is one of these, and it should say, where does it say it on these guys? They come at a preset impedance. Well, one of these, here's my 16 ohm, here's my 8 ohm. So you can't designate what impedance the box is running at. Well, as a tube amp expander, you can choose 4, 8, or 16, so you can match it to really create a load where the amp and that interaction between the amp and the IR and all of that stuff. Because essentially what's happening is when your amp is pushing signal to the speaker cabinet, there's this interaction of electricity. That DC current is impacting the way the power amp section is working and the way the amp is responding. You put a different speaker, that is to say, if you put, I'm going to have to do this at some time. If you change speaker cabinets and you took a tap, come on. Well, no, you could do that. Here we go. You could do that with Cab M Plus. You took a tap off of it with Cab M Plus, which I've put down. There we go. So this you could literally put in line on the way to one of those cabinets. But if you change cabinets, the amp will behave differently, as you can monitor from here. I got to try that out. But the point being is the Waza tube amp expander allows you to kind of fine tune that. The reactive load that's reacting to the amplifier in the UA aux, I have heard, was based on a deluxe reverb. So if you're using an amp different than the deluxe reverb, it's going to have a slightly different way that will not be as one-to-one as what you can do with the Waza tube amp expander. That was one of the things that was really special about that particular box, in addition to the ability to select the impedance. So for those reasons, thank you very much, my friend. Greatly appreciated. Thank you. And Andrew Bonica, what's going on, Bronica? And yes, those two amps together, holy cow. All right, so all that to say, Tom, if you're looking for a reactive load box and you're using a Boogie, my go-to is if it's the JP2C and you're like, I need something, I would not use the aux. I would absolutely suggest Cab Clone IR. There's one for sale for $279 on Guitar Center right now. GuitarCenter.com. Go to their used section. Snag that puppy. Just make sure it has the power supply. That's the other thing. Is quite often people will take stuff to Guitar Center. There is kind of a native power supply you've got to use with that. But you can call up that store if you're so inclined. But the thing is, I have two of those. They're phenomenal. It's the same technology that's built into the Mark 7, same technology that's built into my Badlanders. But the thing about that is that you really have. It's funny. I watched an AB thing, and I'm not going to mention. Well, I will say it. It was somebody going, with the 2 notes cabinets. And first of all, I love their stuff, but they were going back and forth between a mic'd up Boogie cabinet and the IRs that they had set. And you sometimes need to move the mic around in there to find that sweet spot. But they kind of went back and forth between the cabinet and those and where they had it set inside the torpedo wall of sound application that in turn was basically controlling what that unit was doing. But the Boogie cabinet sounded way better. But I think it was the way the guy had it set. But it was interesting going back and forth between the two. The thing that I love about Cab Clone IR is that it sounds like my Boogie cabs. And I was like, I just literally, if I'm going to record something, it's not that you can't get here differently, but for me, literally, no cab, straight into that if it doesn't have Cab Clone IR built into it, straight into the DAW. I choose my cabinet, I'm done. It's just awesome. Like the 2 notes torpedo capture, these only come at singular impedance, 4, 8, and 16. I think you can get it all 3. So you do want to be conscious of that. All right. Hey, I got to get jetting here. No. With pleasure. You're in my sweet spot there, my friend. And this is one of the things is that as I'm kind of getting into Doug 3.0, I'm really collecting things that I'm going to do in addition to Saturday morning content, YouTube content on that can really help people answer the questions they've got. Because if I were looking to buy a reactive load box and didn't have all these devices here, I would be like, I don't know. I have to be careful because I'm a if you take a look back there, I'm a huge UA fanboy. But at the same time, I think being transparent to saying, hey, these are the things that I love about this. These are the things that are the drawbacks, and let people make that choice. That's awesome. All right. Great to see everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Made my day. Make it a great one. Thanks again. I'll see you next Saturday. Appreciate everything.